it occurs to me that it would make sense to give everybody some tips on how to actually play back a video. And that might seem a little bit odd since we're in a generation and a time when everyone uses YouTube or other playback systems. Nonetheless, I learned some things when I looked up the shortcuts for watching YouTube videos and navigating their interface, and so I thought I'd share that same information. Behind me, what you're going to see is a view of from within Google Classroom. So at the top here is a link that goes into an activity that I've asked students to watch. You might be actually doing this recently, or you might be doing something similar in the future. From Google Classroom in particular, there's a window that shows up, and this is a smaller version of what you can view it as. So what I'm going to do is maximize this to full screen. So viewing a video in YouTube has got a number of controls in the lower right-hand corner. So I'm going to bring myself over in the corner, and if I hover just under it, I should see the options. Actually, maybe I'll hit escape to come out of a full window. There we go. What I can probably do is highlight these easier in a small window, but I do suggest, suggestion number one, watch your videos in full screen. Now, I find that in Google Classroom, you tend not to get advertisements, which is great because those can be distracting, if not inappropriate for what you're trying to focus on. So without further ado, let me get into some shortcuts here. The closed captioning I find to be very helpful, and especially if there happens to be a native speaker with some articulation or emphasis that might be different than what I'm used to. So I almost always will turn on the captioning. Those typically are auto-generated, meaning that YouTube has technology that will generate them. And if you're watching my video within this and turned on closed captioning, you'll see the one above as well as mine below. And it might get cluttered if you're watching my YouTube video with the captions on top of theirs. Next button over. Probably familiar to most of you, you can do a number of things, and the quality could be important, especially if you need to see the details. There's a trade-off between the quality and the bandwidth that's used. So if you're looking to keep your Wi-Fi or other internet usage down, you want to be mindful that a lower resolution will be easier. And if you can gather the information from the video that's important to you without having to watch it in high def, that's fine. You might at this point think, wow, I know all this information. And here's another thing that I use. If I feel that I know the information, it's more like a review, I may go as fast as 1.5 times fast. So you could do that. You could make me speak faster, or I should say the playback speak faster. This is typical in a review or a summary where I feel confident about it. And there are times when something might be highlighted that goes quick. And on the inverse, you could actually change this to much slower. And if the speaker is slowed down, the video is slowed down, it can make it easier to process. There's also a custom function on some of the interfaces. So those two tips are helpful as well as a list of shortcuts that I'll link in the description below. Spacebar will start and stop. K will pause the player as well. M will mute or unmute the video. And then if you look through this list, you can see some of them are specific to a playlist, meaning someone has actually curated videos, either of their own or others, and put them into a specific playlist. But other ones are useful for moving forward and backwards. If you're watching this on a mobile device or a tablet, you can tap twice on the sides to get that same effect of moving forward and backwards. So these are useful. If they're not practiced, you might forget about them. And so my tips in summary are: make sure captions are on. Use either the controls here or what's called the scrub bar. Let me bounce back into this for a second. I'm going to reopen this video. And
Hello
as it
guys,
starts to
welcome once
play,
again. In this video, I'm going
I'm
to
going to
show you
press
how to
M
use
to
if-else
stop
statement with
the
your C++.
sound of it. If I click on this and press M, I've stopped it, and you'll notice M doesn't mute. I'm going to move the scrub bar forward to illustrate that you can control this with your mouse. And by doing so, I can move to a select set within the video. It's important that you understand when videos are provided, they're so that you can digest them at your own pace. You don't need to speed through them. If you want to review them, you can move the scrub bar back. When we move into further parts of the curriculum, and even I sometimes need to refer to videos, I'll scrub to where I need the information, I'll play it at a speed that's appropriate for myself, I'll re-review it if needed, and when I'm done, I'll know that the information's there as a repeatable process. There's some similar controls in our conferences. The big difference between conferences and how I use YouTube is conferences tend to be things that have what I would call an expiration date. Communications between a student and myself, or a group of students and myself, that we want to keep for about 7 days, that's going to no longer be appropriate to reference after about a week, because one, we've moved on, and in future years there's no need to re-review those questions that were specific to that delivery. YouTube is something that I use for content that tends to last longer, something that has no expiration date or a much further out expiration date. So that will help you to understand when I reference a video, either curated, i.e. somebody else put it together, or if I put it together, versus ones that I use in class that expire. I'd encourage you, if you're one of my students, to contact me directly with any questions on this. Happy to help, and I hope this was informative for you. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you when you're online.